At 9:47 p.m. on a rain-soaked Friday in October, Victoria Sterling stood trembling on Marcus Webb's doorstep. Her charcoal coat was drenched. Mascara streaked her pale cheeks. 3 days ago, he had quit. Walked away from Sterling Industries, from everything they had built in silence. She had accepted his resignation with clinical professionalism. But now, clutching a manila envelope like a lifeline, she looked him in the eye and whispered 7 words that shattered everything. "I accepted your resignation, not losing you." Marcus Webb, who had spent 3 years loving her in secret, felt the world tilt sideways. The CEO who never lost control was broken in the rain. The man who walked away might be the only one who could save her. But before we get to that moment, before we understand why a brilliant executive would risk everything on a subordinate's doorstep, we need to go back. If you want to know how 2 people built something in the shadows of a corporate empire, how burnout nearly destroyed them both, and how love became the thing they were most afraid to name, stay with me. Hit that subscribe button. Drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. Because what happened next changed everything. But first, we need to understand what broke Marcus Webb, and that story begins 6 months before the rain. The resignation letter sat on Victoria Sterling's desk like a grenade with the pin pulled. She had read it 4 times. Each pass made the words worse, effective immediately. Personal reasons. Grateful for the opportunity. The corporate pleasantries could not hide what screamed between the lines. Marcus Webb was running, and she was the reason why. Victoria pressed her fingertips against her temples, a gesture her executive coach would have recognized as distress masked as focus. Outside her corner office, the manufacturing floor hummed with third-shift activity. Machines stamping titanium alloy forklifts, beeping the organized chaos of a company that never slept. Sterling Industries had grown from her grandfather's aerospace parts shop into a $400 million enterprise under her leadership. She had sacrificed relationships, sleep, and softness to build this empire. And now, the one person who had ever seen past the armor was leaving. 3 days ago, he had walked into this office at 6:53 a.m. She remembered the exact time because she had been surprised to see anyone else in the building that early. He had been holding 2 coffees, the cheap stuff from the break room, not the espresso from her private machine. His face had looked carved from exhaustion. "I need to resign," he had said. No preamble, no build-up. "I have a letter." She had taken it, read it while he stood there watching, and felt something crack in her chest that had nothing to do with business. "Marcus." She had kept her voice level. CEO mode, even as panic clawed at her throat. "If this is about the merger, I can restructure your team, bring in support. It's not about the merger." His voice had been gentle, which somehow made it worse. "It's about me. I'm burned out, Victoria. I'm making mistakes. I barely recognize myself anymore." She had wanted to argue, to fix it, to do what she always did. Solve the problem with logic and resources and sheer force of will. But something in his eyes stopped her. He was not negotiating. He was drowning. "I understand," she had heard herself say. "You've been invaluable to this company. If you need references, recommendations." "Thank you." He turned to leave, then paused at the door. "For the record, working with you has been the best part of my career. I hope you know that." Then he was gone. She had spent the next 3 days burying herself in work, approving his departure paperwork with mechanical efficiency, and pretending the silence in her late-night office did not feel like a death. No more 11 p.m. calls about project timelines that turned into conversations about books and childhood dreams. No more email chains that started professional and ended with Marcus sending her motorcycle photos with subject lines like "Freedom Machine," and her responding with "Impractical Death Trap," and both of them knowing it meant something more. But to understand how they arrived at that resignation at that breaking point, you have to go back further. 6 months earlier, Marcus Webb's apartment had looked like a crime scene if the crime was giving up. Empty takeout containers covered the kitchen counter. Laundry overflowed the bedroom hamper. On the coffee table, a note sat, weighted down by his house keys. The keys his girlfriend of 4 years had left behind when she walked out. "I can't do this anymore. You're married to your job. I'm done being the mistress. Don't call me." No signature, no forwarding address. Just keys and a truth that cut deeper because he could not even argue with it. Marcus read the note for the dozenth time, then let it fall back to the table. Outside his window, Seattle hummed with Friday night energy. People laughing, living, connecting. He felt separated from all of it by glass and exhaustion and the spreadsheet he had been staring at for 3 hours without processing a single number. His phone buzzed. Victoria Sterling's name lit up the screen. He almost did not answer. It was 11:47 p.m. Any work call this late meant crisis, and he did not have crisis left in him tonight. But Victoria did not call unless it mattered, so he picked up. "Marcus?" Her voice was crisp, alert, probably caffeinated. "I need the Q3 projections revised. Legal found issues with the language around the Redmond contract. I'll have it to you by Monday," he said automatically. Silence, then something that sounded almost uncertain. "Are you okay?" The question landed wrong. Too personal, too perceptive. Victoria Sterling did not do personal. She did quarterly targets and operational efficiency and strategic pivots. She had built Sterling Industries from her grandfather's legacy into an industry leader by being smarter and tougher and more ruthless than everyone around her. She did not ask employees if they were okay. "Long week," Marcus managed. More silence. He could hear her thinking, weighing words with the same precision she applied to million-dollar decisions. "The projections can wait until Tuesday," she said, finally. "Take the weekend. Actually take it. Don't work." Marcus blinked at his dark reflection in the window. "You never tell people not to work." "I'm telling you now." Her tone shifted something almost soft underneath the executive polish. "You've been running flat out for months. The integration prep is killing everyone, but you've been carrying more than your share. Take 2 days, sleep, eat something that didn't come from a plastic container. Come back Tuesday." He should have said thank you and hung up. Instead, he heard himself say, "My girlfriend left me." The words hung in the silence like smoke. Marcus could not believe he had said them out loud, especially to her. Victoria Sterling, who was so far above his pay grade she might as well exist in a different atmosphere. Victoria, who he had been half in love with since his first week at the company, when she demolished a vendor's predatory contract in a conference room and he had realized he was watching a master at work. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. She paused. "I'm sorry. It's fine. It was coming." He rubbed his face, suddenly exhausted beyond measure. "She was right anyway. I put the job first. I always put the job first. Marcus, I should go. I'll get you those projections Tuesday." He hung up before she could respond, then immediately felt like an idiot. You did not trauma dump on the CEO. You did not hang up on her mid-sentence. You definitely did not confess personal failures while she was calling about work. His phone buzzed 30 seconds later. A text from Victoria. "For what it's worth, anyone who gives you an ultimatum between them and your career doesn't deserve you. Take the weekend. That's an order." Then, 10 seconds later, "Also, you didn't let me finish. Legal can wait until Wednesday. Tuesday is too soon." Marcus stared at the messages, something warm and dangerous unfurling in his chest. He typed and deleted 3 responses before settling on, "Thank you." Her reply came immediately, "Don't thank me. Just rest." He did rest for the first time in months, and when he came back Wednesday, Victoria was waiting at his desk with coffee, the good stuff from her private machine, and a quiet question about whether he was really okay. They ended up talking for 20 minutes about nothing related to work. Her grandfather's original machine shop, his college years as a philosophy major who accidentally fell into operations management, the weather books they had read. It was the first real conversation they had had as people, instead of CEO and employee. It would not be the last. Over the next 4 months, the late-night work calls transformed into something neither of them named. It started innocently enough. Victoria would call about a project timeline. They would resolve the issue in 5 minutes, and then somehow they would still be talking an hour later. Marcus learned that she woke up at 4:30 a.m. every morning and worked out in her building's gym while listening to murder podcasts. She learned that he had wanted to be a writer before practicality, and student loans steered him toward business school. "What kind of writing?" she asked one night in late March, her voice slightly fuzzy in a way that made him think she was lying down, maybe in bed with the lights off. "Fiction, stories." Marcus was in his kitchen making tea he did not need because his hands needed something to do. "I had this idea for a road novel. Guy buys a vintage motorcycle, fixes it up, rides cross-country with no destination, just freedom." "Did you write it?" "Started it, never finished. Life got busy, then I got a real job." He shrugged, even though she could not see it. "You know how it goes." "I do," Victoria said softly. "I wanted to be an architect, design buildings that made people feel something. My grandfather had other plans." Marcus had seen photos of her grandfather, Marcus Sterling, legendary aerospace engineer, builder of empires, the kind of man who turned precision machining and government contracts into generational wealth. "Did you fight him on it?" "At first, then he died and I inherited everything, and fighting felt disrespectful to his memory." She paused. "That's a lie. Fighting felt like failure. If I couldn't run the company, someone else would, and that was unacceptable." "Do you regret it?" "Every single day," she said, "and not at all. Both things are true." They talked until 2 a.m. that night. Marcus fell asleep with his phone still in his hand and woke up to a text from Victoria. "Thank you for listening. I don't usually talk about that." He responded, "Thank you for trusting me with it." The calls became routine, 3 nights a week, sometimes 4. They would start with work merger prep, vendor negotiations, staffing decisions, and drift into everything else. Victoria told him about growing up wealthy and lonely, groomed from childhood to inherit an empire she never wanted but could not abandon. Marcus told her about his middle-class suburban upbringing, the pressure to be practical, the quiet grief of setting aside dreams for stability. "Do you still want the motorcycle?" she asked one night in early May. "God, yes." Marcus was walking home from the office, phone pressed to his ear, spring air warm against his face. "I've been watching online auctions. There's a 1973 Triumph Bonneville in Tacoma that's perfect. Needs work, but the bones are solid. Why don't you buy it?" "Money's tight right now. The breakup was expensive. I had to buy out Sarah's half of the furniture first month and deposit on my new place." He kicked a piece of sidewalk gravel. "Plus, I'd need somewhere to work on it. My apartment building doesn't allow garage projects." "You could use my garage," Victoria said. Marcus stopped walking. "What? I have a 3-car garage. I use one space. The other 2 just collect dust." She said it casually, like she was offering to share a printer, not inviting him into her private space. "If you buy the bike, you could restore it there." "Victoria, I can't." "Why not?" "Because you're my boss. Because it's weird. Because you think I'm offering out of pity." Her voice sharpened. "I'm not. I'm offering because you light up when you talk about that bike, and I'd like to see you build something for yourself instead of just for the company. If that makes you uncomfortable, forget I mentioned it." Marcus stood on the sidewalk, people streaming past him, and felt the world reorganize itself. Victoria Sterling, Ice Queen, corporate titan woman who ate venture capitalists for breakfast, wanted to help him restore a motorcycle. Wanted to see him happy. The implications made his heart pound. "I'll think about it," he said carefully. "Think fast. That triumph won't stay available forever." He bought the bike 2 weeks later, started restoration work in Victoria's garage every Saturday while she pretended to need to organize storage boxes in the same space, and they ended up talking for hours surrounded by chrome and grease and possibility. Those Saturdays became sacred. Marcus would text her Friday night, "Garage tomorrow," and she would respond immediately, "10 a.m., bring coffee." They would work in comfortable silence broken by conversation. Her asking about engine specs, him explaining the difference between carburetors and fuel injection. Both of them carefully not acknowledging that they were building something more dangerous than a motorcycle. In June, the merger accelerated. Sterling Industries was acquiring Pacific Aerospace, a $300 million company, with facilities in 4 states and a corporate culture that made a Viper Pit look friendly. The deal would double their footprint and cement Victoria's reputation as an industry titan. It would also require 18-hour days, weekend work, and the kind of sustained pressure that broke people. Victoria called Marcus into her office on a Tuesday morning. The executive team was already assembled. CFO Patricia Chen, COO David Morrison, heads of legal and operations. The people who ran Sterling's daily machinery. "We're moving forward with Pacific," Victoria said without preamble. "The board approved this morning. We close in 90 days. She looked directly at Marcus. "I want you to lead the integration." The room went silent. Integration-led was a career-making position. It was also a career-ending one if you failed. Marcus felt every eye on him, measuring, calculating whether he could handle it. "I'm honored," he said, because what else could he say? Victoria had just handed him the most important project of his life. "Don't be honored yet." Patricia slid a binder across the table. "Take a look at what you're inheriting." Marcus opened it. Organizational charts, facility layouts, employee rosters, union contracts, overlapping product lines, redundant systems. It was a nightmare of complexity that would require surgical precision to integrate without destroying value. "Pacific's CEO is Roger Dalton," David added. "He's fighting this acquisition every step. Expect resistance at every level." "We have 90 days to close and 6 months to integrate," Victoria said. "After that, the board expects to see synergies. Real ones, not PowerPoint promises." She stood signaling the meeting's end. "Marcus, stay behind." The executives filed out. Victoria closed the door. "I need you to understand what I'm asking," she said quietly. "This will consume your life for the next 6 months. 18-hour days minimum. Weekend work. Constant crisis management. I can handle it. I know you can. That's why I chose you." She moved to the window, looking out at the manufacturing floor below. "But I also need you to tell me if it becomes too much. If you start drowning, I need to know before you go under." Marcus thought about the late-night calls, the Saturday mornings in her garage, the way she had told him to rest after his breakup. Victoria Sterling caring about his well-being felt like standing too close to the sun. Warm and terrifying in equal measure. "I'll tell you," he lied. The first week Marcus worked 90 hours. The second week 95. By the third week he stopped counting because the numbers made him nauseous. He lived on coffee and protein bars and 4 hours of sleep. The motorcycle restoration stopped. The late-night calls with Victoria stopped. They were in the office together until midnight, most nights anyway. No need for phone conversations when they were physically in the same building. But the dynamic had changed. At work, Victoria was all business. Sharp questions. Impossible deadlines, the weight of her expectations like gravity. Marcus pushed himself to meet every demand, determined to prove her faith in him was not misplaced. He reviewed contracts until his eyes blurred. He managed integration teams across time zones. He negotiated with Pacific executives who saw the merger as a hostile takeover and treated Sterling staff like invaders. By early August, he was making mistakes. Small ones at first. Transposed numbers in spreadsheets, missed emails, forgotten follow-ups. Then bigger ones. He sent sensitive merger documents to the wrong distribution list. Mixed up meeting times and left a Pacific VP waiting in an empty conference room for 40 minutes. Snapped at a colleague who asked a reasonable question. Victoria noticed. She always noticed. "Marcus, my office," she said one Thursday afternoon, her tone leaving no room for argument. He followed her down the hall, dread pooling in his stomach. In 3 years at Sterling Industries, he had never been called to her office for a reprimand. He had been the golden child, the one who exceeded expectations, the one she trusted. Not anymore. Victoria closed the door behind them and gestured to the chair across from her desk. Marcus sat. She did not. "Talk to me," she said. "About what? About why you're falling apart." She crossed her arms, leaning against her desk, those ice-blue eyes reading him like a balance sheet. "You missed the Pacific call this morning. You've sent me 3 reports this week with errors that aren't like you. Your team says you're irritable. What's going on?" Marcus wanted to lie to say he was fine to keep the mask in place, but he was so tired, and Victoria was looking at him with something that was not quite anger, more like concern wearing armor. "I'm drowning," he admitted. "The merger is too big. I thought I could handle it, but I can't. I'm working all the time. I'm not sleeping. I feel like I'm vibrating out of my skin, and I still can't keep up." Victoria was quiet for a long moment. Then she moved around her desk, sat in the chair beside him instead of behind the power position, and said something that broke his heart. "Why didn't you tell me? Because you trusted me with this. Because I didn't want to let you down." "Marcus?" She leaned forward, elbows on knees close enough that he could smell her perfume. Something expensive and subtle. "You're not letting me down. You're human. This merger is massive. I should have seen the strain." She stopped, jaw tight. "I should have protected you better. It's not your job to protect me. It is, actually." Her voice was fierce. "I'm the CEO. My people are my responsibility. And you," she cut herself off, looked away. "You matter. Your well-being matters. If this merger costs you your health, it's not worth it." Marcus's chest felt tight. "I don't know what to do. We restructure. I bring in consultants to take half your load. You start leaving at 7 p.m. every night. No exceptions. You take weekends off. Victoria, the timeline stretches. I'll handle the board." She met his eyes. "I need you functional more than I need you fast. Can you accept that?" He wanted to. He wanted to believe restructuring would fix it, that working less would restore him, that he could find his way back to the person he had been before the merger devoured him. But somewhere deep in his bones, Marcus knew the truth. The problem was not just the hours. It was the disappearance of himself. The way work had consumed everything. His writing, his motorcycle, his late-night conversations with Victoria that made him feel seen. He had become a function instead of a person valuable only for productivity. And he was terrified that if he stopped producing, he would stop existing. "I'll try," he said. Victoria restructured his workload that week. She brought in 2 consultants who took over Pacific facility integration. She implemented a 7 p.m. hard stop for Marcus's team. She checked in daily to make sure he was actually leaving. It helped for about 10 days. Then Pacific's CEO threatened to walk from the merger over intellectual property disputes. and Marcus spent 72 hours straight negotiating with lawyers and finance teams and executives who saw him as an obstacle instead of an ally. He did not sleep. He barely ate. He lived on adrenaline and spite, and the knowledge that if this deal fell through, Victoria's reputation would take the hit. When the crisis resolved, IP disputes settled, merger back on track, Marcus went home at 3 a.m. on a Wednesday. He collapsed on his couch and stared at the ceiling until dawn. His hands shook. His chest ached. He felt like static, like a radio stuck between stations, noise without signal. At 6 a.m., he opened his laptop and started writing. Dear Victoria, I am resigning, effective immediately. This isn't about the merger, the company, or your leadership. It's about me saving my own life before there's nothing left to save. Thank you for everything. You've been the best boss I've ever had, and working with you has been the privilege of my career. I'm sorry I can't see the merger through. I'm sorry I'm not strong enough. But I have to leave before I disappear completely. Marcus. He read it once. He made himself not edit or second guess, and he sent it before courage could fail. Then he closed his laptop, lay down on his couch, and fell asleep for 14 hours straight. When he woke up, his phone had 6 missed calls from Victoria and a text that said only, "Please come to the office. We need to talk." Marcus did not go. He could not face her, could not withstand the disappointment or the logic, or the inevitable conversation where she tried to fix what was unfixable. Instead, he texted back, "I meant what I wrote. I'm done. I'm sorry." She did not respond. The next day, HR called to confirm his resignation and discuss final paycheck logistics. Professional, efficient, no drama. Marcus signed the separation paperwork electronically, returned his laptop and badge to the office mailroom when he knew Victoria would be in meetings, and spent his first Thursday as an unemployed person cleaning his apartment with manic energy. He scrubbed counters, organized closets, threw out the takeout containers that had accumulated like evidence of failure. He tried not to think about Victoria's face when she read his resignation, or the late-night conversations they would never have again, or the motorcycle still sitting in her garage, half restored and abandoned. By Friday evening, the apartment was spotless, and Marcus felt hollowed out, scraped clean of everything but exhaustion. He ordered pizza, actual food, not protein bars. He was halfway through his second slice when someone knocked on his door. He was not expecting visitors. His friends had long since stopped inviting him places. His family lived 3 states away. For a confused moment, Marcus wondered if he had ordered something online and forgotten. He opened the door. Victoria Sterling stood in his hallway, soaked to the skin. It was pouring outside, one of those sudden autumn storms that turned Seattle streets into rivers, and she looked like she had walked through all of it. Her charcoal coat dripped water onto his doormat. Her hair, usually pinned in perfect executive style, hung loose and wet around her face. Mascara tracked down her cheeks in dark rivulets. She was holding a manila envelope against her chest like a shield. They stared at each other. Marcus's mind went blank, then overloaded. Victoria was here at his apartment, drenched and shaking, and looking at him like he was the answer to a question she was terrified to ask. "I'm sorry," she said, voice raw. "I know you wanted space. I know showing up here is inappropriate and probably crosses 10 HR boundaries, but Her breath hitched. She stepped closer. Water dripped from her coat onto his floor. "I accepted you quitting. I understood it. I even agreed with it. You needed to leave, and I should have seen that months ago." She stepped closer still. "But I can't accept losing you completely. I can't accept the idea that we just stop, that you disappear from my life and I pretend those late-night conversations didn't matter, that the garage Saturdays were just about a motorcycle, that I don't—" She stopped, swallowed hard, held out the envelope with trembling hands. "I created a position. It's all in here. job description, salary, benefits. Director of Employee Wellness and Organizational Health. It's remote, flexible hours, leading a company-wide initiative to prevent exactly what happened to you from happening to anyone else. It's real work, important work, and I think you'd be incredible at it. Marcus took the envelope on autopilot, too stunned to process. But that's not why I'm here, Victoria continued, and now her voice was shaking too. I'm here because I've spent 3 days pretending I'm fine, telling myself that losing you is just business, that I can move on like I move on from everything. She looked at him, and Marcus saw something he had never seen before. Victoria Sterling, terrified and unguarded and completely human. And I can't. The rain hammered against the windows behind her. Somewhere in the building a door slammed. A siren wailed in the distance. But in Marcus's doorway the world had narrowed to just the two of them and the space between. I don't want to be your boss anymore, Victoria said. She broke off, laughed bitterly. I don't even know how to say this. I'm good at boardrooms and negotiations and strategic planning. I'm terrible at this. At what? Marcus's voice came out hoarse. At telling you that you matter to me, not as an employee, as a person, as... She pressed her lips together, clearly fighting for composure. When she spoke again, her voice was barely above a whisper. I'm in love with you, Marcus. I have been for months, maybe longer. And I couldn't say anything while you worked for me. Couldn't cross that line. But you don't work for me anymore. She took a breath that sounded like it hurt. So I'm here in the rain, humiliating myself because the thought of you walking out of my life forever is worse than any rejection you could possibly give me. Marcus forgot how to breathe. Victoria Sterling. Untouchable, brilliant, terrifying Victoria Sterling was standing in his doorway confessing feelings he had convinced himself were impossible. The woman he had loved in silence for 3 years, the one he had resigned to escape because staying near her without having her was torture, was telling him she loved him back. Say something, she whispered, please. Come inside. Marcus managed to make his voice work. You're soaking wet and we need to... just come inside. She hesitated like she might bolt, like she had used up all her courage getting to his door and had none left for stepping through it. Then she moved across the threshold into his small, messy, painfully normal apartment. Marcus closed the door behind her, sealing them in together, and felt the foundation of his entire world shift. His apartment had never felt smaller. The walls seemed to close in as Victoria stood dripping on his worn carpet, the manila envelope clutched between them like evidence of something neither could take back. Outside, rain hammered against the windows in sheets, turning the city lights into watercolor blurs. Inside, the silence stretched so tight Marcus thought it might snap. I should get you a towel, he said, because his brain had apparently decided that domestic logistics were easier than processing the fact that Victoria Sterling had just told him she was in love with him. Marcus? Her voice was quiet but firm. I didn't come here for a towel. I know, He ran his hand through his hair, suddenly aware of how he must look. Rumpled t-shirt, old jeans, 2 days of stubble, the walking embodiment of unemployment. Meanwhile, she stood there in her executive coat and tailored slacks, even soaked to the bone, still radiating a competence he had lost weeks ago. I need a second to catch up. You just said, I'm in love with you. She said it again, clearer this time, like repetition would make it more real. I know the timing is terrible. I know I should have waited, should have given you space to recover before dumping this on you. But I spent 3 days trying to be professional about your resignation, trying to accept it gracefully. She looked down at the envelope still in her hands. And all I could think about was that I'd never get another late-night call. Never see you in the garage on Saturday mornings, never... Her breath caught. When she spoke again, her voice was smaller. I've never done this before. Showed up at someone's door, said these things out loud. I don't know the rules. Something in Marcus's chest cracked open. All his life he had seen Victoria as untouchable, a woman who commanded rooms and closed deals and moved through the world with absolute certainty. But standing in his apartment with mascara-stained cheeks and trembling hands, she was not a CEO. She was just a person taking a terrifying risk, just like he had when he sent that resignation letter. There aren't rules, Marcus said softly. Or if there are, we've already broken most of them. Victoria's eyes snapped to his searching. What does that mean? It means I've been in love with you since my first month at Sterling Industries. The confession spilled out before courage could fail. It means every late-night call felt like stealing something I wasn't allowed to have. It means I spent Saturday mornings in your garage pretending I was working on a motorcycle when really I was just desperate to be near you. Her sharp intake of breath was audible even over the rain. It means, Marcus continued, his voice gaining strength, that part of why I resigned was because staying near you without being able to have you was killing me. I was burning out from the merger, yes, but I was also breaking from wanting something I thought was impossible. Marcus, let me finish. He took a step closer, close enough to see the silver flecks in her blue eyes, close enough to smell rain and expensive perfume and possibility. You showing up here tonight, telling me how you feel, it's the most terrifying and exhilarating thing that's ever happened to me. But I need you to understand something. Victoria's fingers tightened on the envelope. What? I meant what I wrote in that resignation letter. I was disappearing. The merger was consuming me, and I couldn't see a way out except to leave completely. He gestured around his small apartment, the second-hand couch, the motorcycle magazines on the coffee table, the life he was trying to rebuild. I'm not the same person I was when I started at your company. I'm not sure who I am right now, and I can't— His throat tightened. I can't be what you need me to be if I don't figure out who I am first. The words hung between them like a suspended sentence. Marcus watched Victoria process them, saw the flicker of pain cross her face before she locked it down with practiced control. I'm not asking you to be anything except yourself, she said quietly. That's the point. The person you think you need to be the one who works 90-hour weeks and sacrifices everything for the job, that's not who I fell in love with. Then who did you fall in love with? The man who lights up talking about vintage motorcycles and road trips he's never taken. The one who sends me book recommendations at midnight and argues about character motivation like it matters. The person who listened when I told you about wanting to be an architect, who didn't judge me for inheriting an empire I never wanted. She took a shaky breath. I fell in love with Marcus Webb, the human being, not Marcus Webb, the employee, and I'm standing here because I don't want to lose the human being. Marcus felt something loosen in his chest, a knot he had been carrying for months without naming. I don't want to lose you either. But I'm terrified. Of what? Of this being another thing I fail at, of not being enough. He stopped, forced himself to say the hardest part. Of you realizing I'm not worth the risk. Victoria set the envelope down on the small table by his door with deliberate care, like she was making a decision. Then she closed the distance between them until they were barely a foot apart, her rain-soaked presence filling his senses. Listen to me very carefully, she said, and her voice carried that boardroom steel he knew so well, turned toward protecting instead of commanding. You are not a failure. You recognized that you were drowning, and you made the hardest choice possible. You saved yourself. That's not weakness. That's survival. It doesn't feel like survival. Because you've spent your whole life being told that quitting means failure. She reached up, hesitated for half a second, then gently touched his face. Her fingers were cold from the rain, but her touch burned. "I'm telling you, it means wisdom. You quit a situation that was destroying you. That takes more courage than staying." Marcus's eyes stung. He had spent 3 days feeling like a coward, like he had abandoned ship when the company needed him most, like he had let Victoria down in the worst possible way. But she was looking at him like he had done something brave instead of broken. "I missed you," he admitted, his voice rough. "The second I sent that resignation, I missed you, not the job, you. I missed you too." Her thumb brushed his cheekbone, a gesture so tender it made his breath catch. "Those 3 days were the longest of my life. I kept reaching for my phone to call you, then remembering you were gone. I'd see something I wanted to tell you about and realize I couldn't anymore." She paused. "I went to the garage on Saturday, out of habit, and your motorcycle was just sitting there half-finished, and She broke off, blinking rapidly. "You what?" Marcus prompted gently. "I sat on the floor next to it and cried." The admission came out like a confession. "Which is insane because I don't cry. I haven't cried in years. But I looked at that triumph and thought about all the Saturdays we'd spent there talking and laughing and building something together, and the idea that those were over broke something in me." Marcus moved on instinct, pulling her close, wrapping his arms around her rain-soaked shoulders. She stiffened for half a second. Victoria Sterling did not do vulnerability, did not accept comfort. Then she melted into him with a sound that might have been relief or surrender, or both. They stood like that for a long moment, breathing together, rain drumming overhead. Marcus could feel her heart pounding against his chest, could feel her trembling slightly, could feel the careful control she had maintained for years finally cracking apart. "I don't know how to do this," she whispered against his shoulder. "Relationship feelings, any of it. I've spent my entire adult life focused on the company. I've had dates, flings, things that looked like relationships from the outside but never meant anything. And now I'm here in your apartment telling you things I've never told anyone, and I'm terrified I'm doing it all wrong." Marcus pulled back just enough to see her face. "You showed up in the rain to tell me you love me. That's pretty much perfect." A ghost of a smile touched her lips. "Is it? Yeah." He smiled back, feeling lighter than he had in months. "Though next time, maybe check the weather forecast first." "Next time." She tested the words like they held weight. "Does that mean—" "It means I love you too." Marcus said it clearly, no hesitation, letting the truth fill the space between them. "It means I want to try this, whatever this is, but I need you to understand that I'm not ready to jump back into work, not yet, maybe not for a while." Victoria nodded slowly. "The position I created, it's real, and the offer stands. But there's no timeline. Take a month, 2 months, however long you need, or don't take it at all." She gestured between them. "This isn't contingent on employment. You created a whole position for me. I created a position the company needs, and you'd be perfect for. But if you never step foot in Sterling Industries again, I still want this. I still want you." Marcus studied her face, looking for doubt or obligation, or the careful diplomacy she deployed in boardrooms. He found none of it. Just Victoria, stripped of armor, offering him something precious and terrifying. "I need time," he said carefully, "to figure out who I am outside of work. To rest, to finish that motorcycle, and maybe actually take the trip I've been dreaming about for years. Can you give me that yes? No hesitation, no negotiation. Take whatever time you need. And I need us to start this right. Not as boss and employee, not as CEO and wellness director or whatever the position is. Just as 2 people figuring out if this works. What does that look like?" Ryan considered. "Dates? Real ones. Coffee shops and movies and terrible restaurant choices. Conversations that aren't at midnight because we're both working. Getting to know each other outside of Sterling Industries. I'd like that. Victoria's smile was small but genuine. Though I should warn you, I'm terrible at dating. My last relationship ended because I canceled 3 dates in a row for board meetings. Lucky for you, I'm unemployed. My schedule is wide open. She laughed, a real sound that lit up her whole face, and Marcus felt something shift into place. This could work. This terrifying, impossible thing might actually work. You should probably change, he said, gesturing at her soaked coat. You're going to catch pneumonia standing there. Victoria glanced down at herself, seeming to notice for the first time that she was dripping water all over his floor. I didn't exactly plan the dramatic entrance. I was sitting in my car outside your building for 20 minutes, arguing with myself about whether to come up. Then it started pouring, and I thought if I didn't move right, then I'd lose my nerve. I'm glad you didn't lose your nerve. Marcus moved toward his bedroom. Wait here, I'll get you something dry. He rummaged through his dresser, emerging with an old college sweatshirt and sweatpants that would be too big on her, but at least were clean. When he returned to the living room, Victoria had removed her coat and was standing by his bookshelf, studying his collection with the same intensity she probably brought to contract negotiations. You have 3 copies of Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, she observed. Different editions. The 1974 original, the 25th anniversary, and the recent one with the afterword. He handed her the dry clothes. Bathrooms down the hall. She took them, fingers brushing his, then paused. Marcus, thank you. For dry clothes, for not slamming the door in my face, for listening, for... She struggled for words. For being kind even when I showed up unannounced and probably scared you half to death. You didn't scare me. You surprised me. There's a difference. Victoria disappeared into the bathroom. Marcus heard the door close, water running the small domestic sounds of her in his space. It felt surreal. Victoria Sterling in his apartment wearing his clothes, having just confessed feelings he had spent years believing were impossible. He picked up the manila envelope she had left on the table, opened it. Inside was a formal job description printed on Sterling Industries letterhead exactly as she described. Director of Employee Wellness and Organizational Health, remote work, flexible hours, comprehensive benefits, a salary that made his eyes widen. Below the job description was a handwritten note in Victoria's precise script. This is real work that matters, but it's also not why I came tonight. Whatever you decide about the job, I meant what I said. I love you and I want this to work. No pressure, no timelines, no expectations except honesty. V. Marcus was still holding the note when Victoria emerged from the bathroom. She had toweled, dried her hair, and changed into his sweatshirt and pants, both comically oversized. Without makeup and formal clothes, she looked younger, softer, almost fragile. She caught him staring and smiled self-consciously. I look ridiculous. You look beautiful, Marcus said honestly, and cold. Come here. He guided her to the couch, wrapped a throw blanket around her shoulders, then sat beside her. Close, but not touching, giving her space to breathe. Outside, the storm was settling into steady rain, the kind that would last all night. Inside, the silence was comfortable. Tell me about the position, he said, gesturing to the papers. What made you think of it? Victoria pulled the blanket tighter, organizing her thoughts. After you resigned, I started reviewing our company policies. Benefits, work-life balance, mental health support. What I found was embarrassing. We offer the legal minimum for mental health coverage. We have no programs to prevent burnout, and our culture basically rewards people for destroying themselves in service of productivity. That's most companies. That doesn't make it right. Her voice carried that edge of determination he recognized from board meetings. You weren't the first person to burn out at Sterling Industries. You were just the first one I cared enough about to notice. Before you, I accepted that high-pressure work came with casualties. People who couldn't handle it left, and I replaced them with people who could. Efficient, ruthless, and completely wrong. Marcus watched her face as she spoke, saw the genuine remorse there. Creating this position isn't charity, Victoria continued. It's acknowledgement that I've been failing my people. If someone with your dedication and competence burned out, the problem isn't you, it's the system, and I need someone who understands that system from the inside to help me fix it. Someone who broke under it. Someone who survived it and has the insight to prevent others from experiencing the same thing. She met his eyes. But I meant what I wrote. This isn't contingent on us. If you take the job and we don't work out romantically, you keep the job. If you never take the job and we do work out, that's fine too. These are separate decisions. Ryan believed her. Victoria might be many things, but she was not manipulative. If she said the job was real and the relationship was separate, she meant it. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "Anything. When did you know about us, I mean? When did it stop being just late-night work calls?" Victoria thought for a moment, pulling the blanket around herself like armor. "Remember that night in March when you told me about the road novel you never finished, the motorcycle trip with no destination?" Marcus nodded. "You talked about freedom like it was something sacred, like the whole point of life was finding moments where you weren't performing for anyone, where you could just exist without purpose or productivity." She paused, voice going soft. "And I remember thinking that I'd never felt that way about anything, that my whole life was purpose and productivity, and I didn't know how to exist outside of it. That made you fall in love with me?" "No." A small smile touched her lips. "That made me envious. What made me fall in love was 3 days later when you called me at 2 a.m. because you couldn't sleep. You said you'd been thinking about our conversation and you wanted to know if I'd ever felt free. Ever had a moment where I wasn't being Marcus Sterling's granddaughter, or the CEO, or any of the roles I perform." Marcus remembered that call. He had been half asleep himself, words coming easier in darkness. "I told you about being 16, Victoria continued. "Sneaking out of my grandfather's estate to go to the public library. Just sitting there for hours, reading architecture books, dreaming about buildings I'd never design, feeling like a normal teenager for 5 precious hours before my security detail found me and dragged me home." "You cried during that call," Marcus said quietly. "I heard it in your voice." "I did, and you didn't make it awkward or try to fix it. You just said everyone deserves moments where they're not performing." She looked at him directly. "And I realized I'd been performing my entire life except for those late-night calls with you. That's when I knew. When I understood that you saw me as a person first and the CEO second. That's so rare. It felt like oxygen." Marcus's throat tightened. "I see you, Victoria. I've always seen you. I know. That's why I'm here." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the rain. Marcus's mind was spinning through possibilities and fears and hopes he had suppressed for years. Victoria Sterling loved him, wanted to build something with him. The woman who commanded boardrooms and closed 9-figure deals was sitting on his second-hand couch in his old sweatshirt, looking at him like he held something precious. "I'm still scared," he admitted, "of failing, of not being enough." "So am I." Victoria shifted closer until their shoulders touched. "But I'm more scared of not trying. I've spent my whole life playing it safe, staying in the lane my grandfather set out, never taking personal risks, keeping relationships at arm's length. And it's made me successful and miserable in equal measure. You don't seem miserable, because I'm good at hiding it." She turned to face him. You know what the worst part of being CEO is? Not the pressure or the hours or the impossible decisions. It's the loneliness. Everyone wants something from me. The board wants growth. Employees want stability. Vendors want contracts. No one just wants me. I want you, Marcus said. No agenda, no expectations, just you. Victoria turned to face him fully, and her eyes were bright. Then let's try this. Slowly, carefully, honestly. We go on actual dates. We figure out who we are outside of Sterling Industries. We mess up and talk about it instead of running. Can we do that? I think so. Marcus reached out, took her hand. Her fingers were still cold but warming. Where do we start? How about breakfast tomorrow? There's a diner on Pike Street I've driven past 1,000 times but never stopped at. We could go. Just 2 people having pancakes and terrible coffee. Marcus smiled. That sounds perfect. Really? Because I was worried it was too mundane. Victoria, I've spent 3 years having late-night conversations with you about philosophy and motorcycles and childhood dreams. Mundane sounds, revolutionary. She laughed, that genuine sound he loved, and squeezed his hand. Breakfast at 9. I'll be there. You still up for it? You just got back from a trip. This is different. That was solo healing. This is us celebrating that we survived distance and came back stronger. Marcus pulled her closer until she was tucked against his side. I want to see you geek out over old buildings and drink overpriced coffee and wake up next to you in a place that isn't haunted by work stress. When you put it that way, she tilted her face up, kissed him softly. Thank you for coming home. Thank you for being home to come back to. They left for Pike Street Diner early Saturday morning. Victoria driving her BMW because Marcus's entire body was still sore from 5 days on the motorcycle. The drive took 40 minutes through Seattle traffic dressed in late autumn browns and grays, landscape beautiful in its starkness. They talked the whole way, easy conversation punctuated by comfortable silence, the kind of rhythm that only came from genuinely knowing someone. The diner was exactly as advertised. A hole in the wall wedged between a vintage bookstore and a coin laundry. Vinyl booths, linoleum floors, waitresses who called everyone honey, and the smell of bacon grease and burnt coffee. Perfect. Marcus arrived at 8:55, nervous as a teenager on a first date. Victoria walked in at 9:02, wearing jeans and a simple sweater instead of her usual tailored suits. No makeup except lip gloss, hair down instead of pinned up. She looked beautiful and terrified and completely human. Hi, she said, sliding into the booth across from him. Hi. Marcus could not stop smiling. You're late. I was sitting in my car again, panicking. She smiled back. Turns out, showing up for a date is just as scary as showing up in the rain. But you did it anyway. I did it anyway. A waitress appeared with coffee, actually terrible as promised in menus. They ordered breakfast, made small talk about the weather, the diner's questionable decorating choices, anything except the weight of what they were attempting. But underneath the mundane conversation, something else was building. Ease, comfort, the beginning of something real. Can I tell you something? Victoria said as their food arrived. Pancakes for her and omelet for him. Always. I haven't been on a real date in 4 years. I'm completely out of practice. And Marcus reached across the table, took her hand. Lucky for you, I'm unemployed and rusty too. We can be disasters together. She laughed and the sound filled the diner like light. Deal. They ate breakfast and talked about everything except work. Books they had read, places they wanted to travel, childhood embarrassments, favorite films. Marcus learned that Victoria had wanted a dog her entire life, but never felt like she had time for one. Victoria learned that Marcus had a secret talent for baking bread, but had not made a loaf in years. Small details, mundane facts, the building blocks of actually knowing someone outside of professional context. As they finished eating, Victoria's phone buzzed. She glanced at it reflexively, then deliberately turned it face down on the table. "Work?" Marcus asked. "Emergency board meeting. They want me there in an hour." She sighed. "Old habits. I should take it." "Should you?" Victoria looked at the phone, then at Ryan, then at the half-finished pancakes on her plate. He could see her calculating the cost of missing the meeting versus the cost of cutting this short. CEO obligations versus personal desires, the endless triage of importance she had performed her whole life. Then she picked up the phone and typed a quick message. Set it back down. "I told them I'm unavailable until this afternoon. They can handle it without me." Marcus felt his chest expand. Yeah. She met his eyes. "I meant what I said last night. I want to learn how to do this. Put personal life first. Trust other people to handle things. Stop acting like the company will collapse without me. So I'm starting now." "That's huge." "It's terrifying," she smiled. "But so is everything else about this, and I'm doing it anyway." They left the diner an hour later, standing on the sidewalk in weak autumn sunlight, neither quite ready to say goodbye. Marcus's hands were in his pockets to keep from reaching for her. Victoria was studying him with that analytical intensity he recognized from the office, like she was trying to memorize this moment. "What are you doing tomorrow?" she asked. "Nothing. Why?" "I thought maybe we could work on your motorcycle. In my garage, if you want." Marcus's heart kicked. "I'd love that." "Okay, 10 a.m. I'll bring coffee." Victoria smiled, stepped closer, and this time when she kissed him, it was not his cheek. It was soft and brief and tasted like maple syrup and possibility. When she pulled back, her eyes were bright. "See you tomorrow, Marcus." "See you tomorrow, Victoria." He watched her walk to her car, a sleek BMW that screamed executive success, and drive away. Then he stood on that sidewalk for 5 minutes, grinning like an idiot, feeling the first real joy he had experienced in months settling into his bones. This was the beginning. Messy and uncertain and terrifying and absolutely right. But 3 weeks later, they had their first real fight. The fight happened on a Wednesday evening, 2 weeks into whatever this was. Marcus had mentioned looking at job postings, just browsing to see what was available, and Victoria's face had gone carefully blank in that way he recognized as her shutting down. "You don't need to job hunt," she said. Her voice was controlled professional, CEO mode creeping in. "The position I created is still available. I know, but I need to see what else is out there. Make sure I'm choosing your offer because I want it, not because it's convenient." "Convenient?" The word came out cold. "Is that what you think this is?" "No, I think you created a position you believe the company needs and I'd be good at. But I also think part of you created it to keep me close. And I need to know I'm not taking it just to be near you." Victoria stood abruptly, pacing her living room with that caged energy he recognized from high-stress board meetings. "So my motives are suspect now. Your motives are complicated. So are mine. That's not an accusation, Victoria. It's just honesty." "Honesty?" She stopped pacing, turned to face him. "You want honesty, fine. Yes, I created that position partly to keep you close, because the thought of you taking some job across the country and me never seeing you again made me physically ill. Is that what you wanted to hear?" "Actually, yes." Marcus stayed seated, keeping his voice calm. "Because that's real. That's you admitting you want me around, which is different from hiding behind corporate justification." "I wasn't hiding." She stopped, caught herself, then laughed bitterly. "God, you're right. I was totally hiding, presenting it as pure business when really I was just terrified you'd leave. I'm not leaving. But I need to make choices about my career that aren't primarily about us. Can you understand that?" Victoria stood at her window back to him, shoulders tight. For a long moment, Marcus thought she might ask him to leave. Shut down completely the way she probably did in boardrooms when negotiations went badly. Then she turned around and her face was open and raw. "I understand it intellectually. Emotionally, I hate it. I want to solve this by throwing money at it, by making the perfect offer you can't refuse, by controlling the outcome." She crossed back to the couch, sat beside him. "But that's not fair to you, and it's not healthy for me. No, it's not." "So what do we do?" Marcus took her hand, felt it trembling slightly. "You let me job hunt without panicking. I promise to seriously consider your offer alongside everything else. And we trust that if this is real, it'll survive me making my own choices. That's terrifying." "I know. Do it anyway." She did, though Marcus could tell it cost her. Over the next week, Victoria visibly worked to give him space while he explored options. He had interviews with 3 different companies ranging from terrible to interesting. None of them felt right. Too much like returning to the same patterns that had broken him. Different building, same cage. The wellness position at Sterling Industries, by contrast, felt like purpose. Creating programs to prevent burnout, restructuring policies to support mental health, building a culture where people could be human instead of just productive. It was real work that mattered, and Marcus found himself genuinely excited about the challenge. But he needed to be sure he was choosing it for the right reasons. "I want to take the position," he told Victoria over dinner at her place 3 weeks into their relationship. "But I need you to understand something first." She set down her fork, giving him complete attention. "Okay, if I take this job, I'm taking it because I believe in the work, because I think I can make a real difference in people's lives. Not because you created it not to be near you, but because it matters." He held her gaze. "That means I'm going to push back on you when I think company policies are wrong. I'm going to challenge the culture you've built, even when it's uncomfortable. I'm going to be an employee who cares more about people than productivity, and that might put us in conflict." "I'm counting on it," Victoria said quietly. "The whole point of the position is to change things. If you just rubber stamp everything I do, you're not doing your job. Can you handle that? Me disagreeing with you at work? Honestly, I don't know. I've never had a personal relationship with an employee before. Never had to navigate that separation." She reached across the table, took his hand. "But I want to try. We set clear boundaries. At work, you report to the COO, not me. We don't discuss our relationship in the office. We keep business and personal as separate as possible." She squeezed his hand. "And if it doesn't work, if mixing professional and personal implodes, then we'll deal with it together. I'm not asking you to take the job, Marcus. I'm asking you to consider it as a legitimate option, separate from us. If you choose something else, we'll figure that out too." Marcus looked at her, really looked at the woman who had shown up on his doorstep in the rain, who was learning to relinquish control one painful step at a time, who loved him enough to risk losing him by giving him choice. The decision crystallized. "I'll take it," he said. "Not starting immediately. I need another month to finish recovering, to get the motorcycle running, to just be unemployed a little longer. But yes, I want the position." Victoria's face transformed, relief and joy breaking through her careful composure. Yeah, on one condition." "Name it. You let me design the programs without interference. Trust me to do the job you hired me for, even when my recommendations make you uncomfortable." She did not hesitate. "Deal. When do you want to start?" "January. Give me 2 more months to be human, then I'll come back ready to fight for your employees' humanity too." "That's perfect." Victoria stood cross to his side of the table and kissed him thoroughly. "Thank you for choosing this, for choosing us. Thank you for letting it be a choice instead of an obligation." They spent the rest of the evening planning. Not the job, but the next 2 months of freedom. Marcus wanted to finish the Triumph restoration, maybe take a short trip to test it out. Victoria wanted to use some accumulated vacation time, something she had not done in 5 years. They talked about taking a long weekend somewhere. Just the two of them, no work, no phones, nothing but road and possibility. The Triumph roared to life on a cold Saturday morning in late November. Marcus sat astride the vintage motorcycle, hands on the grips, feeling 3 months of work and healing vibrate beneath him. The restoration was complete. New gaskets, synchronized carburetors, fresh paint on the fuel tank, and deep British racing green chrome polished until it caught sunlight like a mirror. Victoria stood in the garage doorway, coffee cup in hand, watching him with a smile that made his chest tight. "How does it feel?" she called over the engine noise. Marcus twisted the throttle, listened to the response, then killed the ignition. The sudden silence felt profound. "Like freedom," he said. "Like I actually finished something for myself instead of abandoning it halfway through." "You did finish it. I'm so proud of you." He climbed off the bike, pulled off his gloves, and crossed to where she stood. "We finished it. You handed me tools for 3 months, listened to me complain about stripped bolts, helped me figure out the wiring harness when I was ready to give up. This wasn't solo." "Maybe not." Victoria set down her coffee, wrapped her arms around his waist. "But you did the hard work. I just showed up. Showing up is the hard work." Marcus kissed the top of her head, breathing in her shampoo and the garage smell of motor oil that had somehow become home. "Speaking of which, I have a question. Dangerous opening. Remember that road trip I talked about, the one from my unfinished novel, Riding Cross-Country with No Destination? I remember. I want to take it. Not cross-country, not yet, but a week. Just me and the bike and some highways I've never seen. Clear my head before I start at Sterling in January." He pulled back to see her face. "Will you be okay with that?" Victoria's expression flickered, something that looked like fear before she schooled it into support. "Of course. You should go. When? Next week, if the weather holds. I know it's last minute and I know we have plans." "Marcus." She put her hand on his chest, right over his heart. "Go take your trip. I'll be here when you get back." But her voice was tight, and Marcus knew her well enough now to hear what she was not saying. "You're scared I won't come back. That's ridiculous. Is it?" He took her hand, led her to the bench against the garage wall, and sat, pulling her down beside him. "Talk to me. Real talk, not the brave face." Victoria was quiet for a long moment, staring at the Triumph like it held answers. When she finally spoke, her voice was small. "My grandfather took a trip once. Said he needed to clear his head after a difficult quarter. He was gone for 3 weeks, and when he came back, he was different. Distant. Like the space away had shown him he didn't actually need me as much as he thought. I'm not your grandfather. I know that intellectually." She pressed her palms against her thighs, a gesture Marcus recognized as anxiety. "But there's this voice in my head that says if you get away from me, if you experience freedom without my chaos and baggage, you'll realize you're better off alone." Marcus's heart broke a little. "Victoria, you're not chaos and baggage. You're the person I want to come home to. You say that now. I say that always." He turned her to face him, hands on her shoulders, making her meet his eyes. "Do you trust me? Yes. Then trust this. I'm taking a week to ride and think and be alone with myself because I need to prove I can be okay independently before I tie my professional life back to yours. That's healthy. That's me doing the work." He softened his voice. "But I'm coming back to you, to us, to the life we're building. That's not negotiable." Victoria's eyes were bright. I promise, and to prove it. Ryan pulled out his phone, opened his calendar. Let's plan something for when I get back. Something concrete you can look forward to instead of spiraling about abandonment. Like what? That long weekend you mentioned. Pick a place you've always wanted to visit but never had time for. We'll go together the day after I get back from the bike trip. No work, no phones, just us. Victoria considered this, and Marcus could see her brain working, trying to find the flaw in the plan or the way it could go wrong. Then she seemed to consciously let it go, choosing trust over fear. There's a small town in the San Juan Islands, Friday Harbor. They have an architecture walking tour I've wanted to do for years. Perfect. Book it, make reservations, plan the whole thing, give yourself something to control while I'm gone. He smiled. I'll do the spontaneous motorcycle trip. You do the meticulously planned romantic weekend. We each play to our strengths. She laughed, some of the tension leaving her shoulders. That's actually a good idea. I have them occasionally. Occasionally. But she was smiling, and when she kissed him, it tasted like trust and coffee, and the future they were choosing together. Marcus left for his trip the following Tuesday. The Triumph loaded with a small pack of essentials and a route that was more suggestion than plan. He headed south through the Cascades, following back roads and small highways, staying in cheap motels and eating at diners, living the cliché he had been dreaming about for years. The first day was pure joy. Cold air rushing past the Triumph, humming beneath him, landscape unfolding like a gift. He stopped at a roadside overlook and called Victoria. "How's it going?" she answered immediately, like she had been waiting. "It's perfect. The bike's running great, the weather held, and I just saw a sunset that would make you want to design a building around it. Send me a picture." He did, and she responded with a photo of her dinner. Takeout Thai from their favorite place, eaten alone at her massive dining table. The image made his chest ache in a good way. "I miss you," he admitted. "I miss you too, but I'm glad you're doing this." They talked for 20 minutes, easy conversation about nothing important, before Marcus had to go. The light was fading, and he wanted to reach his motel before dark. But knowing she was there, that he could call her, and she would answer, made the solitude feel chosen instead of lonely. The second day brought rain around noon, the kind of cold November downpour that made riding miserable. He pushed through for an hour before admitting defeat and pulling into a small-town library to wait it out. Inside, surrounded by books and quiet, he opened his laptop and stared at the blank document he had been avoiding for weeks. The novel. The one he had started and abandoned, the story about freedom and roads and finding yourself in motion. He had told Victoria he was scared to be bad at it, and she had said to be bad at it anyway. So he started typing, expecting nothing, and 3 hours later had 2,000 words of terrible, beautiful, honest prose about a man running from himself while pretending to run towards something. When he emerged from the library, the rain had stopped, and the world smelled clean. Marcus felt lighter, like he had set down a weight he had been carrying so long he had forgotten it was there. He texted Victoria a photo of his laptop screen showing the word count. Her response came immediately. "You're writing. How does it feel? Terrifying and right, like this. Like us. Exactly like us." The third day, Marcus rode through mountains that took his breath away and stopped at a diner where the coffee was terrible and the pie was transcendent. He sat in a booth by the window working on his novel, occasionally looking up to watch the world pass by. An older waitress refilled his coffee and gestured at his laptop. Writing the great American novel, just a small one, about motorcycles and freedom. Best kind. My husband used to ride. Said it was the only place his brain ever shut up. She topped off his cup. He's been gone 5 years now. I miss watching him come home from trips all windburned and happy and full of stories. Marcus thought about Victoria waiting at home, probably checking her phone too often and trying not to spiral. "I'm heading back soon. Someone's waiting." Good. The trip matters, but coming home matters more. That night, in a motel room that smelled like old carpet and industrial cleaner, Marcus called Victoria. "How are you really?" he asked, skipping pleasantries. A pause, then honesty. "Struggling. I'm trying not to be. Trying to give you space and trust the process, but I keep having these moments where I'm convinced you're not coming back. What do you do when you have those moments?" I call my therapist. Journal about it. Sometimes I go to the garage and sit with your tools and remind myself that you left them here because you're coming back. Her laugh was self-deprecating. It's pathetic. It's not pathetic, it's healing. Marcus lay back on the uncomfortable motel bed, phone pressed to his ear. You're learning to sit with uncertainty instead of controlling it. That's huge. It feels terrible. Most growth does. He smiled at the water-stained ceiling. For what it's worth, I think about you constantly. Every beautiful view, every good meal, every word I write. My first thought is wanting to share it with you. You're not something I'm running from, Victoria. You're what I'm learning to run toward. He heard her breath catch. Marcus, I know it's only been 3 days. I know a week apart shouldn't be this hard, but I need you to understand something. What? He chose his words carefully, wanting to get this right. Taking space doesn't mean needing less. It means building enough self to bring something whole to us. Does that make sense? Yes. Her voice was thick. When do you come home? 2 more days. Then I'm all yours for a long weekend in Friday Harbor. I booked the cutest bed and breakfast. It's probably too romantic and definitely too expensive, but I don't care. Perfect. Send me the details. She did, and they spent another hour on the phone while Marcus looked at photos of the place she had chosen. A restored Victorian farmhouse with water views and a hot tub and breakfast served by the fireplace. It was exactly the kind of place Victoria would pick, carefully researched and perfectly appointed. And Marcus loved that she was pouring her need for control into planning something for them instead of trying to control him. The 4th day brought mechanical trouble. The Triumph's clutch started slipping around noon, and Marcus limped into a small town with one motorcycle shop run by a grizzled mechanic who looked like he had been fixing bikes since before Marcus was born. Clutch cables stretching. The mechanic said after a quick look. I can adjust it, but you'll need a replacement soon. Can you do it now? Parts won't be here until tomorrow morning. You're welcome to wait in town, or I can ship it to wherever you're headed. Marcus considered. He could push on end the trip early, get home to Victoria tonight instead of Friday. But that felt like running. Cutting the trip short because being alone got uncomfortable. Because he missed her too much. Because independence was harder than partnership. I'll wait, he decided. Adjust what you can today. Replace the cable tomorrow. The mechanic nodded approval. Good choice. Bike like this, you don't rush. Marcus spent the afternoon exploring the small town population, maybe 3,000. The kind of place where everyone knew everyone and strangers got curious looks. He found another diner, wrote another 2,000 words, and felt the story taking shape in ways that surprised him. The protagonist was not running from anything specific anymore. He was running toward himself, toward the person he had been before obligations and expectations had buried him. It felt autobiographical in ways that were uncomfortable and necessary. That evening, Marcus video called Victoria instead of just phoning. When her face appeared on screen, he felt his heart kick. You look tired, he observed. Brutal day. The Pacific integration is hitting snags and everyone wanted my input. She was clearly in her home office laptop open beside her, still in work clothes at 8 p.m. I know I'm supposed to be delegating more, but crisis management is hard to hand off. Did you eat dinner? She glanced away, guilty. I had coffee. Victoria. I know. I'll order something after we hang up. Order it now, I'll wait. She sighed, but picked up her phone, ordered Thai delivery, then returned to the video call. Happy, getting there. Talk to me about the integration issues. They spent an hour discussing work, and Marcus found himself analyzing the problems with fresh perspective. Distance had given him clarity. He could see where Victoria was micromanaging where her team was capable, but not trusted where her need for control was creating bottlenecks instead of solving them. You need to let go, he said gently. Not because you can't handle it, but because handling everything yourself is unsustainable. I know that intellectually. Then know it practically. Tomorrow, identify 3 decisions you'd normally make and let someone else make them. Don't oversee. Don't double-check. Just trust. Victoria looked skeptical. What if they make the wrong choice? Then they learn from it, and the company doesn't collapse. And you get to practice believing that your value isn't just in being indispensable. She was quiet, processing. Then, you're going to be very annoying when you start as director of wellness, aren't you? Marcus grinned. Absolutely. I'm going to challenge every policy that prioritizes productivity over people starting with late-night emails and working dinners. I'm going to hate it. No, you're not. You're going to be relieved someone finally gave you permission to build something different. He softened his voice. That's why you created this position. Remember not to keep me close, but to change the culture that almost destroyed me. Both things can be true. They are both true, and I'm coming home ready to do the work. Victoria smiled, and it reached her eyes. I'm counting on it. How's the trip otherwise? He told her about the clutch cable, the small town, the writing he had been doing. She told him about booking their weekend, the architecture tour she had planned, the breakfast place near the bed and breakfast that supposedly had the best coffee in the Pacific Northwest. You've researched everything, haven't you? Marcus asked, amused. Of course. I don't do spontaneous, well, remember, I love that about you. I love that you're planning the perfect weekend while I'm wandering aimlessly. We balance each other. We do. She paused, then asked quietly, Are you glad you went on this trip? Yes. Not because I needed to get away from you, but because I needed to prove to myself that I could be alone and okay. That I have an identity outside of work and outside of us. He held her gaze through the screen. But Victoria, being alone and okay just makes me more certain about wanting to come home to you. The space isn't creating distance, it's creating clarity. Her eyes filled, and she blinked rapidly. I needed to hear that. I know, that's why I said it. They stayed on the video call until her food arrived, talking about nothing and everything comfortable in the silence when conversation lapsed. Finally, Victoria yawned, and Marcus laughed. Go to bed, eat your dinner, and sleep, and let the integration crisis wait until morning. Yes, boss, not your sauce. Your partner reminding you that you're human. I like the sound of that, partner. She smiled. See you Friday. See you Friday. The 5th day, the Triumph was ready by 10 a.m., the new clutch cable installed and tested. Marcus paid the mechanic, thanked him for the work, and headed north toward home. He could have pushed straight through, made it back by evening, but instead he took his time. Stopped at overlooks, took photos, wrote in coffee shops, savored the last day of solitude. Around 4 p.m. his phone rang. Not Victoria. His mother. A rare call that made him nervous. Hi, Mom. Marcus, honey, I've been trying to reach you all week. Your father and I were worried. Guilt stabbed through him. In all his focus on Victoria and the trip and his own healing, he had barely talked to his parents. I'm sorry, I've been on a motorcycle trip, getting some space. Space from what? Did something happen at work? He had never told them about the resignation, the burnout, any of it. They still thought he was working at Sterling Industries, grinding toward success they would understand. The truth felt like admitting failure. "I left my job," he said, "2 months ago. I was burning out and I needed to leave." Silence. Then his mother's careful voice, the one she used when she was trying not to judge. "You quit without another position lined up. I had to, for my health." "Marcus, that's—" She stopped, regrouped. "That's concerning. How are you paying rent? What's your plan?" "I'm starting a new job in January, Director of Employee Wellness at Sterling Industries. Better position, better pay, better for my mental health." "So you're going back to the same company that burned you out?" It was a fair question, one he had asked himself. "It's different now. I'm different. And I'm going back to change the culture that almost broke me." His mother sighed. "I don't understand any of this. You've always been so responsible, so focused. This doesn't sound like you." "Maybe that's the problem." Marcus kept his voice gentle. "Maybe the me you know was performing responsibility instead of actually taking care of myself. This is me learning the difference. And the motorcycle trip part of the learning, proving I can be alone and okay." Another pause. "Are you seeing someone, a therapist? I'm writing again, the novel I started in college. And I'm in a relationship with someone who's teaching me what healthy support looks like. A relationship, Marcus, you just got out of one 8 months ago." "Mom, this is different. She's different." He found himself smiling, just talking about Victoria. "She's brilliant and driven and learning to be human alongside me. We're good for each other." His mother was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. "You sound happy. Different, but happy." "I am. For the first time in years, I actually am." "Then I guess I'm happy for you, even if I don't completely understand." They talked for another 20 minutes, Marcus explaining his plans, his mother gradually warming to the idea that maybe her son's unconventional choices were actually working. When they hung up, Marcus felt lighter. Like he had set down another weight he had not realized he was carrying. The weight of his parents' expectations, their vision of success that had never quite fit. He made it home to his apartment by 7 p.m., the Triumph, purring into his parking space like it belonged there. His place looked the same. Small and slightly messy and completely his, but he felt different entering it. Stronger, clearer, more himself than he had been in years. Victoria texted before he could even get his helmet off. "You're home. Can I come over, or is that too eager?" Marcus smiled, typed back, "Come over. Bring wine. I missed you." She arrived 30 minutes later with a bottle of red and a smile that made his heart stutter. They stood in his doorway for a moment, just looking at each other before Marcus pulled her inside and kissed her properly. She tasted like hope and coming home and everything he had been riding toward. "How was it?" Victoria asked, when they finally broke apart, both breathing hard. "Perfect. Lonely. Necessary. All of the above." He led her to the couch, poured wine, and spent the next 2 hours telling her about the trip. The roads, and the writing, and the small towns, and the mechanical trouble. She listened with complete attention, asking questions, laughing at the right moments, looking at him like he had done something brave instead of just taken a week on a motorcycle. "Did you figure out what you needed to figure out?" she asked finally. "Yeah. I figured out that I can be alone without disappearing, that my identity exists outside of work and outside of us, and that's actually what makes me better at both." He took her hand. "I also figured out that independence isn't the opposite of partnership. It's the foundation of it." "I'm still learning that," Victoria said. "This week was hard. I wanted to call you 100 times. Wanted to track you down and make sure you were okay. Wanted to control your safety since I couldn't control your choice. But I didn't. I know. I'm proud of you. My therapist is proud of me too. She smiled, sitting with uncertainty as advanced level work apparently. We're both doing advanced level work. We are. She squeezed his hand. And tomorrow we get to do the fun part. Friday Harbor. Architecture tours. That bed and breakfast I researched within an inch of its life. You're still up for it. I just got back from a trip. This is different. That was solo healing. This is us celebrating that we survived distance and came back stronger. Marcus pulled her closer until she was tucked against his side. I want to see you geek out over old buildings and drink overpriced coffee, and wake up next to you in a place that isn't haunted by work stress. When you put it that way, she tilted her face up, kissed him softly. Thank you for coming home. Thank you for being home to come back to. September brought Victoria's 42nd birthday, and Marcus planned a surprise that required calling in favors and careful coordination. He contacted her therapist, her assistant, and her closest board member to clear her schedule for a long weekend, then drove her to a small town 4 hours north, where a renowned architect was teaching a weekend-intensive workshop. What is this? Victoria asked, as they pulled up to the community college hosting the class. Your birthday present, 3 days learning architecture from someone whose work you've admired for years. No phones, no work, just you exploring the thing you gave up for inheritance. Her eyes filled with tears. Marcus, you've spent your whole life being what everyone else needed. This weekend be what you need. I'll be here when you're done. Victoria threw herself at him, kissing him hard enough to bruise, then pulled back with a smile that transformed her entire face. Thank you. For seeing me. For this, for everything. Marcus spent the weekend writing in coffee shops while Victoria discovered that architectural passion did not die just because you suppressed it for decades. She came back each evening exhausted and exhilarated, showing him sketches and talking about design principles with the kind of joy he usually only saw when she forgot to be CEO. I'm actually good at this, she said Sunday night, almost surprised. Not just competent, but good, creative and innovative. Of course you are. You're brilliant at everything you actually care about. I forgot I could care about things outside of Sterling Industries. She looked at her sketches, then at Marcus. I'm going to keep taking classes, not to become an architect professionally, but just to have something that's mine. Is that okay? It's more than okay. It's essential. October marked 1 year since Marcus had quit Sterling Industries. 1 year since the burnout that had forced him to choose himself over productivity. He was standing in his office, still small, but now decorated with employee thank you notes and photos from wellness events when Victoria appeared in his doorway. Do you have a minute? She asked, professional, even though they had woken up in her bed that morning. For you, always. She closed the door, dropped the professional mask, and smiled. I bought a house. You what? Bought a house. Made an offer last week, closed yesterday. Didn't tell you because I wanted it to be a surprise. She pulled up photos on her phone. It's smaller than my current place. Has a 2-car garage perfect for the Triumph and whatever project you decide to take on next. And there's a sunroom that would make a perfect architecture studio. Marcus looked through the photos. A craftsman bungalow with original hardwood and built-in bookshelves and windows that seemed to invite light. It was beautiful and human-scaled and absolutely nothing like the Victorian mansion she had inherited. It's perfect, he said honestly. Move in with me. Victoria said it simply, no preamble. I know we talked about someday, but I don't want to wait for someday. I want to wake up with you every morning and come home to you every night and build a life in a space we chose together. Marcus's throat tightened. You sure? I've never been more sure of anything. You've taught me that choosing what you want instead of what's expected isn't selfish. It's survival. I want this. I want us. I want to stop living in separate places and start building a home together. He kissed her then, in his office in the middle of the workday, breaking their professional boundaries because some moments were more important than protocol. When they broke apart, both smiling, he said yes, absolutely yes. They moved in together in November, combining his second-hand furniture with her expensive pieces and creating something eclectic and comfortable in theirs. Marcus set up a writing desk in the sunroom alongside the drafting table Victoria had bought for her architecture work, and they spent evenings working in parallel. Him on his novel, her on design projects, comfortable in shared silence. December brought the company holiday party, the first one Marcus attended, as both director of wellness and Victoria's partner. They had been careful about public displays at work, maintaining professional distance, but the party felt different. Festive and social enough that boundaries could relax slightly. Marcus was talking with some of his wellness team when David Morrison approached, looking slightly uncomfortable. "Can I have a word?" the COO asked. They stepped aside. "I want to thank you," David said, "for everything you've done this year. The cultural transformation, the programs, the way you've pushed all of us to think differently about how we treat people. Just doing my job. It's more than that. You could have implemented surface-level changes and called it success. Instead, you fought for fundamental transformation even when it made you unpopular." David smiled. "The company is better because of you. We're all better because of you." The acknowledgement hit harder than Marcus expected. "Thank you, that means a lot. There's something else." David glanced around, then lowered his voice. "Victoria told the board she wants to transition out of CEO within 5 years. She's proposing a gradual succession plan where she moves to chairman and focuses on strategic oversight." Marcus kept his expression neutral, even though his heart was pounding. "I didn't know she'd formalize that." "She presented it last week. The board is supportive. She's built this company into something remarkable, and the fact that she's planning succession instead of clinging to power is actually increasing confidence in long-term stability." David met Marcus's eyes. "I wanted you to know because it's clear you're part of why she feels capable of making that choice. You've given her permission to be more than just CEO. She's given herself that permission. I just supported the decision. However it happened, it's good for her and good for the company, so thank you for that too." As David walked away, Marcus felt a wave of emotion he could not quite name. Pride in Victoria for choosing herself. Gratitude that their relationship had created space for both of them to transform. Hope for futures they were actively building instead of passively inheriting. He found Victoria across the room laughing with a group of employees looking younger and lighter than he had ever seen her at a company function. She caught his eye and smiled. That private smile that was just for him, and mouthed, "I love you." Marcus mouthed it back, feeling the truth of it settle into his bones. The year ended with them back at Pike Street Diner, the place where they had had their first real date, eating pancakes and terrible coffee and talking about the year that had transformed both their lives. "Do you regret it?" Victoria asked. "Quitting, coming back, any of it? Not for a second. I regret that it took almost losing you to wake me up. But the outcome, no regrets at all." She reached across the table, took his hand. "You saved my life, you know. Not just by creating wellness programs, but by showing me that I could be more than what I'd inherited. That wanting something different wasn't betrayal. You saved mine too. By showing up in the rain when you could have just let me go. By fighting for us when it would have been easier to maintain professional distance." Marcus squeezed her hand. "We saved each other. I like that better. Mutual salvation." They finished breakfast and walked out into January cold, a new year stretching ahead full of possibility. Marcus's novel was nearly finished. Victoria's architecture portfolio was growing. The wellness programs at Sterling Industries were being studied by other companies as a model for cultural transformation. They were building lives that honored both their partnership and their individual dreams, proving that love did not require sacrifice when both people were committed to growth. "Where to next?" Victoria asked, as they stood on the sidewalk, breath fogging in cold air. "Home," Marcus said. "Our home." I like the sound of that. They drove back to the craftsman bungalow they had made theirs, walked through the door hand in hand, and settled into the life they had been brave enough to choose. The Triumph sat in the garage, ready for spring rides. The sunroom held their creative work, evidence of dreams they were actually pursuing. The bedroom they shared was warm and comfortable, and proof that intimacy could survive complexity when built on honesty. That night, curled together on the couch with a fire crackling and snow beginning to fall outside, Victoria said something that felt like an ending and a beginning all at once. "I used to think success meant never needing anyone, being so competent and complete that dependence was weakness." She turned to look at Marcus. "But you've taught me that real strength is being vulnerable enough to need someone and brave enough to let them need you back. That partnership isn't about completion. It's about two whole people choosing to build something together." Marcus kissed her forehead, held her close, and felt gratitude for every painful step that had brought them here. The burnout that forced him to quit. The rain-soaked confession on his doorstep. The motorcycle trips and therapy sessions and difficult conversations and boundary setting. All of it, every hard choice had been worth it. "I love you," he said, "and I'm proud of us for doing the work, for choosing growth, for building this. I love you too, and I'm proud of the life we're creating. One that honors work without being consumed by it, that makes space for dreams and rest and each other." They sat in comfortable silence, watching snow fall through the window, both thinking about futures they were no longer afraid to want. Victoria would gradually transition out of CEO, maybe become chairman, definitely keep taking architecture classes and designing buildings that would never be built but mattered anyway. Marcus would continue transforming company culture, finish his novel, take longer motorcycle trips, maybe start teaching other companies how to treat people humanely. But more than any individual achievement, they would keep choosing each other. Keep showing up through the complicated parts, and the beautiful parts, and the mundane everyday parts that actually made up a life. Keep being brave enough to want something real, instead of something perfect. Outside, snow continued falling, blanketing Seattle in white. Inside, Marcus and Victoria sat together in the home they had chosen, the life they had built, the love they had fought for. It was not the ending either of them had imagined when she showed up on his doorstep a year ago, drenched and desperate and terrified. It was better. It was real. It was theirs. And every day they chose it again. This story proves that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is quit. Walk away from what's destroying you. Show up in the rain for what matters. And build something new with someone who sees you as human first and everything else a second. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever felt burned out or trapped or afraid to choose yourself, drop a comment below. Tell me your city. Tell me your story. Let's see how far this message travels, and hit that subscribe button. Because there are more stories like this. More reminders that you're not alone. More proof that transformation is possible when you're brave enough to choose it. Thanks for being here. Thanks for listening. And remember, you deserve a life that honors who you are, not just what you produce.